U.S. Republican Senator John McCain has once again accused Moscow of waging a war against Washington. McCain said Russia's alleged cyber attacks on U.S. political organizations to influence the recent presidential election amount to an act of war. Earlier this week, McCain had demanded stronger sanctions against Russia over, quote, the hacking which the U.S. intelligence community claims amounted to meddling in the U.S. election. McCain has been a staunch critic of Russia and President-elect Donald Trump, who has repeatedly cast doubt over the claim that Russia launched cyber attacks on the U.S. On Thursday, the Senate Armed Services Committee, led by McCain, is to hold the first public hearing in Congress on the alleged hacking. Russia has vehemently denied the accusation. For more on the story, we go live to Washington to talk to James Jatras. He's a former U.S. Senate foreign policy analyst. Mr. Jatras, it's so good to have you with us. What do you think of the remark by John McCain, who has said that, accused Moscow of waging a war and said that the cyber attacks are actually an act of war?
Well, I respectfully disagree on a number of points. To start with, and most fundamentally, there's a large element of doubt that Russia actually did engage in these activities and did in any way interfere with our elections. Certainly President-elect Donald Trump is quite skeptical of that, and he said he will look into it, but he is not prejudging this. But I think that's the fundamental question. Did this happen at all? Even if it did, and I, again, am quite skeptical of that, calling it an act of war raises even more questions. Certainly countries spy on each other all the time. They conduct cyber activities against each other all the time. Is every act of espionage an act of war? And if it's an act of war, what kind of response does it demand? Are we going to start hacking into each other's financial systems, start sabotaging each other's infrastructure, energy grids, and so forth? This is a very open-ended concept if one runs with it.
Mr. Jatras, we had the U.S. President Obama order the expulsion of those more than 30 Russian diplomats from Moscow a few days ago, and now we are hearing from a Republican senator talking about, again, the alleged hacking by Russia into the recent presidential election. How serious one should be about the impact of those orders by Obama and such comments by a senator during the last days of the Obama administration, and how they can affect U.S.-Russia relations?
I have no doubt that Obama's intention is politically to sabotage the incoming Trump administration, to undermine Mr. Trump's legitimacy as the next president, and to make it very hard for him to proceed with what he wants to do, which he said he wants to do, is to have a rapprochement with Moscow. And unfortunately, a number of senators and congressmen on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, are cooperating with this effort. And I think it is very bad for American policy. I would say that the only positive side is I expect them to lose. I expect Mr. Trump will come out on top of this.
So you think they will not negatively affect U.S.-Russia relations in the future?
No, I don't think these steps will really amount to much, and I think it was important that President Putin did not respond. It was clear that Obama intended to provoke him into some kind of a response, a tit for tat, that would start us on a downward spiral of sanctions and counter-sanctions, and Mr. Putin did not do that. He said instead, we're not going to do anything for the time being. Bring all the kids from the embassy over to the Kremlin to see the Christmas tree. It was a completely different response than I think what Mr. Obama intended.
Okay, Mr. Jatras, thank you so much for talking to us. James Jatras, former U.S. Senate foreign policy analyst, joining us live from Washington.